I saw a discussion online about the number of practice hours that teams are using during the off season at high schools, outside of any type of uh, club practices and or individual or personal training that a player may be doing on their own. And some of the coaches were saying that they have basketball activities for more than 10 hours a week, plus potential games, with their high school team on weekends. And to me, uh, it's more than I've ever used it during a season, let alone in a preseason. Even when I was coaching in Europe, we typically had, 4 practices a week of 90 minutes each. So we're, looking at 6 hours a week of practice. And these coaches are saying that they have 10 hours a week and it's not enough. And then I watch their teams play, and not the specific teams, but just in general. And I'm like, what are you doing with this practice time? Why aren't players getting considerably better? And why do your teams, struggle to play together and struggle to perform, basic skills? So I don't understand what we're doing, because I see players playing, or I should say practicing and training far more than I remember ever practicing and training when I was young, especially during the off season. Because during the off season, during the fall we'd be playing, soccer or football, or I ran cross country in high school, something like that. And then the spring, playing baseball or running track, something like that. So, we hardly, as a high school, we never really did anything organized during the spring and fall, or yeah, spring and fall. Um, and now, these teams are together 12 months out of the year. They're playing in, weekly leagues during the week, a Thursday night league, and then they've got tournaments on the weekend. They've got, 4 practices during the week. Um, and I just don't see a considerable improvement in the play, and both from a team aspect and also from an individual standpoint. So I don't know what we're doing at practice, and I question how well we're using the practice time. If a high school coach tells me he needs 20 hours per week with a high school team, I know that coach doesn't know what they're doing. There is absolutely no reason that a high school program needs 20 hours a week of basketball practice. Um, and then you look at, you have this amount of time, and you're working with players 10 hours a week in the off season, 20 hours a week during the season, and you see how many injuries there are. And one, likely because, they're overreaching and overexerting themselves and overtraining. But second, like, if you have 10 hours a week with your team in the off season, how are you not lifting weights? How can you use the excuse of, well, we don't have enough time, to not lift weights? I don't understand that. Like, I just don't understand what teams can be doing with this much time on the court, or in basketball activities, and players really aren't improving, and teams really aren't playing good basketball. Obviously, some players really do improve. Some teams play really well together, play really good basketball. But if you look at the average team, I just don't think that the average has improved greatly over the last 10 to 15 years as training time has increased, and specialization has increased. Even the best teams, I don't know that the best teams now are better than the best teams 15 years ago, or the best players now are better than the best players 15 years ago. Despite this increase in practice time, and the increase in specialization, and the increase in coaching, the increase in time spent in training or practice related activities as opposed to more free play activities, time spent in basketball specific activities as opposed to time spent playing different sports or training for different sports. So if we've seen this increase in training time, practice time, time on court, coaching sessions, amount of coaching, and all this, and players and teams aren't really improving, like, what are we getting out of that effort? What's going wrong? Why are practices inefficient? Are they just not effective? Are players just overtrained, and then they're in a state where they can't really improve as much because their body's essentially breaking down, and so they can't get the benefit from the practice? Do they have to kind of reduce the intensity of their efforts because of the extra volume, and so then they're not ever going at a fast enough or hard enough or with enough concentration because they're worried about being able to sustain the effort over a longer volume of activity. I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. But if these numbers are realistic and teams are really spending 10 hours in the off season together and upwards of 20 hours together during the season, and we're not seeing real improvements in terms of players and teams, I think there's a definite problem, and we need to figure out solutions that are best for the players before we worry about what's good for the coaches. But what's going to be best for the players, in terms of their training, in terms of their enjoyment of the activity, in terms of their health, and ultimately in terms of their improvement and skill development.